he had passed the concussion protocol. Let me repeat that. Anthony Rizzo indeed passed the standard concussion protocol following a collision with Fernando Tatis Jr. at first base on May 28, 2023. Notice how Rizzo staggered around the bag like a drunken sailor? See him drop to one knee? He had clearly suffered a head injury of some sort, perhaps even a somewhat serious one, except the Yankees decided to call it a neck injury after he had indeed passed his concussion protocol. Rizzo missed just 3 games before returning to the lineup. Rizzo kept playing consistently until early August, when he began complaining of brain fogginess. He went on the IL and missed the rest of the season. Tests ended up revealing that he had indeed suffered cognitive impairment. Turns out he'd been dealing with post-concussion symptoms ever since that collision. Before the injury, Rizzo was batting .304 with 11 homers, getting off to a pretty hot start to the season. Afterward, he hit .172 with exactly 1 home run. And yet, the team kept trotting him out there day after day. Something was up. He had never gone through a slump like this in his MLB career, probably his entire baseball life. Yet there he was, day after day, unable to hit water if he fell out of a boat. The thing that's concerning about this whole situation was, it doesn't start and end with Rizzo. This behavior has become habitual, the cyclical theme of the Yankees treating serious injuries like a case of the sniffles. Whether players are rushed back or allowed to rush back before they're ready is somewhat unclear. Regardless, this is the pattern that's emerged. The team has also made a habit of trading away future stars for damaged goods. Regardless, recent Yankee teams have had so many cases of this happening that it's time to call it out for what it is, an organizational issue with injury perception. How about we let one of their own stars call them out? Step up to the plate, Garrett Cole. After reporting to Tampa for spring training, Cole looked back at 2023 and said, "Certainly there were injuries that were outside the normal realm that impacted us. With that said, we get injured too much as a group. We need to improve. The we here should cast a wide net." Who and what exactly needs to improve? The front office? The strength and conditioning program? The culture in the clubhouse? Why have the Yankees kept playing guys who are known to be hurt or rushing back too soon from an injury? But before we get more into that, I want to tell you about one of the coolest sponsors we've ever had in this channel, a virtual reality baseball game, MLB Home Run Derby VR, available now on MetaQuest. When you're playing it, as I have been pretty intensely for the last few days, you really feel like you're in whatever ballpark you selected, and you can select any ballpark being as they have all 30 official MLB fields. While yes, the balls are obviously pretty juiced, it is a home run game after all, the alignment of the bat on ball feels pretty realistic as someone who played baseball for almost 10 years. For example, here we are hitting weak ground ball because the bat was angled accordingly. Aside from the actual gameplay, they have some pretty awesome features, like a progression system that allows you to work your way from single A to the majors, achievements and quests, and a ton of cosmetic upgrades for your clubhouse and avatars, including bat skins, batting gloves, ball trails, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can also play ranked online or against up to 8 of your friends. This game just released last week on MetaQuest and is available there now for just $30, a fraction of the price of most sport games. So if you're interested, click on either the link in my pinned comment or description to find out how you can get your own copy of MLB Home Run Derby VR. Now, back to our video. The examples are many. Giancarlo Stanton, Josh Donaldson, Luis Severino, Carlos Rodon, Frankie Montas, to name just a few recent ones. The Yankees finished 82-80 last year. They spent $82 million on players who didn't play very much because of injury. The outlook for this season is already starting to look kinda bleak, with Aaron Judge joining Cole as major early health concerns. The Martian, Jason Dominguez, already is in the depths of his own recovery process, in another instance of major injury perhaps being taken a bit too nonchalantly by either player or organization. So, how did the sport's most successful team of all time end up here? Why can't the Yankees acknowledge when a player is hurt, and why can't they recognize that what they're doing isn't working and that they need to change before they stifle their own chance at a championship, year in and year out? The Yankees last won a World Series in 2009. We did it with a team filled with future Hall of Famers and perennial All-Stars. Jeter, A-Rod, Rivera, Posada, Pettit, Teixeira, Cano, the list goes on and on. This was the last real deep postseason run for many of these guys, a fitting send-off for quite a few illustrious careers. Then came 2010. The Bronx Bombers made it to the ALCS and lost to the Rangers, only to get knocked out in the ALDS the next season. By 2012, they were back in the ALCS before getting swept by the Tigers. However, a large portion of their issues during this time were due more so to underperformance or freak injuries than habitual injury issues within the organization. That would come just a little bit later. The 2013 season saw a third place finish and a team in desperate search of fresh blood. The youngest player to get an AB all season was 22-year-old John Ryan Murphy at his negative 0.4 WAR. Rivera appeared in just 5 games, Jeter 17, and A-Rod 44. In their stead came, respectively, wave after wave of has-beens, guys like Alfonso Soriano, Kevin Youkilis, and Travis Hafner, great players who were past their prime and liable to get banged up as a result. 28 players went on the DL that season. the most in baseball. Jeter had broken his ankle during the previous ALCS, A-Rod had hip surgery, Euclid hurt his back. It was just a brutal year for the team overall. So the Yankees did what they had to do, or at least what they thought they had to do. They threw money at the problem. They brought in 37-year-old Carlos Beltran on a 3-year, $45 million deal, along with Jacoby Ellsbury at 7 years, $153 million, and Brian McCann at 5 years, $85 million. They also added Masahiro Tanaka at 7 years, $155 million from Japan. Yet, despite all this invested capital, they would finish second in the AL East, and not make the postseason at all in 2014. How in the world did they miss the playoffs? In a word, injuries. Again. Starting pitchers CC Sabathia and Ivan Nova missed pretty much the entire year, and Tanaka and Michael Pineda missed 3 months apiece due to various issues. McCann and Beltran both finished with OPS pluses under 100. Beltran also got bit by the injury bug, battling a bone spur in his elbow and playing in just 109 contests. Perhaps Ellsbury, though, is the most instructive here. He had a solid 2014 and was off to a hot start in 2015, hitting .324 when he hurt his knee in May and then missed the next 2 months. He came back healthy and ready to lead the Bombers into the postseason. Right? Nope, not even close. He came back seemingly still banged up, and in 74 games he hit just .224. At 31 he should have been in his prime, or at least on the outer half of it. So, why didn't he come back at full speed? Well, that's the $1 million question, or in Ellsbury's case, the $153 million question. Judging by his anemic numbers and often awkward play, his knee was still bothering him, aka, he was still somewhat injured. He wasn't healed all the way, that's for sure. Did Ellsbury rush back to justify his salary? Did the team rush him back because of some old-timey expectation to return from injury a bit fast if you have a big contract? Why on earth would they risk the investment if that was the case? Why didn't Ellsbury take 30 more days to make sure his knee truly was okay? Or why wasn't he strongly advised to internally? You can argue that maybe he was, but based on their recent track record, that seems kind of unlikely. The truism in sports is that there's a difference between playing through pain and playing through an injury. Aches and pains come with athletics. Injuries, however, require time to resolve, lest they get worse and worse, but it seems like the modern Yankees have had an issue making the distinction between pain and injury, and then between moderate injury and more severe. But there was hope on the horizon, because deep down in their minor league system, changes were coming, and they were coming fast. Young, healthy players were clawing their way to the Big Apple. Gary Sanchez arrived in 2016 and hit 20 homers in 52 games, finishing second in Rookie of the Year voting. Also up for 27 games was Aaron Judge, who had developed into one of the most prized prospects in all of baseball. Young flamethrower Luis Severino was inching close to stardom at age 22. Dellin Betances was already one of the game's best out of the pen. All were enormous physical specimens who looked like they could suit up on Sunday for any NFL team. All were homegrown talents, and in 2017, they almost took the Yankees to the World Series for the first time in 8 years. Losing the ALCS to the Astros in an epic 7-game series that would end up muddled in controversy for years after. That year, serving as Judge's first official rookie season saw him club 52 homers, then a rookie record, and start in the All-Star game, all while finishing second MVP voting in the AL. Sanchez, Severino, and Betances all made the All-Star team, but after this, each would end up enduring various injuries that would haunt their time in the pinstripes. Sanchez followed up his strong 2017 with an injury-riddled 2018. Where 2 stints in the DL with groin issues limited him to just 89 games, a 186 batting average, and an OPS plus of 89. He was never quite the same again following. It begs the question, should Gary have spent more time on the DL, letting his injuries heal, before getting back to the most physically demanding position on the baseball field? For the aforementioned Ellsbury, things would only continue to get worse as well. He didn't play at all in 2018 or 2019 due to injuries, and he would end up retiring as a result. Then there was the sad case of Luis Severino, who seemed destined to sit at the top of the Yankee rotation for a long time. In 2017 and 2018, he was indeed that guy, going 33-14 while averaging more than a strikeout per inning. He was not yet 25 years old, which is why the Yankees signed him to a 4-year, $40 million deal prior to the 2019 season. Within a month of signing the contract, Severino was diagnosed with rotator cuff inflammation. It got weird, however, following. Somehow, during the rehab of his shoulder, Severino came down with a grade 2 lat strain. How does that happen? He wasn't pitching at full intensity because presumably he was taking care of his body's recovery, yet he came down with something new. This hinted at some prior issue that was manifesting itself as he tried to fix his other issues, or some kind of acceleration in his recovery process that probably wasn't too well advised. It gets even weirder though. He pitched in just 3 games in 2019, and then right before COVID hit, Severino underwent Tommy John surgery because of a partially torn UCL. It kind of goes without saying, but Tommy John surgeries don't generally follow huge rehab periods. The timing was very odd and begs many questions. When did Severino first have elbow pain? How does a pitcher get injured twice when not actually pitching in real games? Did the Yankees engage in wishful thinking when they were laying out his timelines? Or was it a toxic form of machismo where players remained stoic for fear of letting the team down? Again, it's probably impossible to diagnose it fully, as we as fans of baseball can only really theorize from the outside. Severino ended up spending 706 days on the injured list. Following all of that, Severino then ended up hurting his groin in a rehab start. In 3 seasons from 2019 to 2021, Severino had appeared in just 7 games. Yet his 2022 season was much improved, despite missing another 60 games with a lat strain. The Yankees picked up his $15 million option for 2023, and he proceeded to be one of the worst pitchers in the league. Pick any metric. Unfortunately, his all stank. Today, he's a Met after departing this offseason. Dellin Betances was perhaps an even sadder case, as he was once one of the most dominating relievers in the game. In 2019, he had battled back from shoulder and lat issues himself and rejoined the team in September against the Jays. He pitched exactly 1 inning before tearing his Achilles following a little celebration after a strikeout. His career never really recovered, and he was done by 2021. The biggest move the Yankees arguably made around this time was acquiring superstar Giancarlo Stanton in the winter of 2018. Yet, for Stanton, it's been a similar story. Coming off an MVP season, Stanton remained healthy in 2018 after being shifted full-time to DH, playing in 158 games with 38 homers and 100 RBIs to show for it, numbers the Yankees assumed Stanton would put up for another decade, or at least the next 5 to 7 seasons. But in the ensuing years, Stanton would make 8 separate trips to the IL, including at least 1 trip in each of the last 5 years. Let's run through them real quick. 2019, he strained his bicep and sprained his knee, which caused him to miss 4 months. 2020, he strained his hamstring, which caused him to miss a month. In 2021, it was a little better, as he only missed a handful of games with 2 short IL trips. But in 2022, he ended up missing 6 weeks with a strained calf and Achilles. Then, in 2023, he ended up straining his hamstring, causing him to miss 2 full months. You could argue that if anything, Stan had appeared in too many games over this period, however. You see, like Ellsbury, he'd probably come back a bit sooner than he should have because he was getting paid too much to sit. Again, like with Ellsbury, we don't know if that's coming from the organization or if it was coming more so from him and just not being impeded by the organization. Obviously, if he was indeed injured, he should have been on the sidelines, right? Allowed time to fully recover from his most recent injury. However, returning from being banged up, he ended up playing consistently and posting some of the worst numbers of any Yankee, hitting 191 with an 87 OPS plus and a WAR of negative 0.8, thanks in large part to a BABIP of 211, which was largely caused by having some of the worst speed in baseball. There's really no other way to put it. Giancarlo Stanton sucked in 2023. It was obvious he wasn't right. There were so many plays he had to jog on, or times he didn't slide to try to preserve his already weakened frame. It was hard to watch. But this isn't and wasn't surprising, especially for the Yankees. GM Brian Cashman said of Stanton over this offseason, he's going to wind up getting hurt again more than likely, because it's just part of his game. That was just straight insulting, said of a guy that seems like his ultimate priority is to play as many games as possible. If you pressure guys like that to come back too early, or just let them come back too early, it's your fault if they get hurt again. Yet the blame game seems to endure for the New York front office to this day. Too many times in recent days have players gutted it out through injuries that then blossomed into something worse, as though the team just couldn't emotionally handle yet another superstar ending up on the long-term IL. Exhibit A, Aaron Judge's toe. In early June, Judge made a ridiculous catch in right field before slamming into the wall at Dodger Stadium, nearly knocking it over. In doing so, he slammed his toe into the concrete base of the wall and suffered what was called at the time a sprained big right toe. Again, given that the team misdiagnosed Anthony Rizzo's concussion, it's unsurprising that this strain ended up becoming something like a shapeshifter out of a Netflix horror franchise. 3 weeks later, Judge told reporters that he actually had a torn ligament in his toe, a very unusual baseball injury. For treatment, he was getting platelet-rich plasma injections, yet he still wasn't able to engage in baseball activities. This led some doctors at the time to question whether the Yankees were doing enough for their superstar. Dr. Joseph Purita, who had saved Bartolo Colon's career by fixing his shoulder, said, "For a big-time athlete like Aaron Judge, is PRP enough? I'd be more in favor of saying, let's go for the gusto. Let's maybe use bone marrow aspirate. And though we know we're putting a lot of stem cells in from the get-go, rather than just using growth factors." Dr. Purita also wondered if Judge might have turf toe. Remember, this started off as a sprain. Then, after another prolonged period, the Yankees did end up admitting that it probably was indeed turf toe the whole time, something that Judge will have to manage for the rest of his career. For example, when his abs hurt this spring, Judge admitted that his mechanics had been off because of his toe. Before the 2023 season, Judge had signed a record extension of 9 years and $360 million. The team also signed starter Carlos Rodon in a 6-year, $162 million deal. That's a lot of money tied up between two guys who have now become somewhat injury-prone over their careers. For Rodon, he would end up making just one spring training start before going down with forearm tightness, the same issue he experienced with the Giants in 2022. While recovering from that injury, Rodon suffered a back injury that was deemed chronic. When he did pitch, he was terrible, allowing 22 runs and 8 dingers in 6 starts and 27 innings after he'd returned. He then hurt his hamstring and went back on the IL. When he returned, again, he still stunk, obviously still dealing with his own injury issues, ending the season 3-8 with an ERA of 6.85. Good for an ERA plus of 63, meaning Yordan was basically half as good as an average MLB pitcher. Let's see now. Stanton played hurt and was terrible. Yordan played hurt and was terrible. The Yankees had blown Rizzo's concussion diagnosis and Cole Judge's toe sprained, and that was all during the course of just one season. But it didn't end there. One player from the minors who the team was excited to see was the Martian, Jasson Dominguez, who came up on September 1st and promptly hit 4 homers in his first 33 ABs, including a homer on his first big league swing off Justin Verlander. But Dominguez's elbow apparently was bothering him, and he didn't tell the Yankees trainers for several days. An MRI revealed a torn UCL, and on September 14th, he had Tommy John surgery. What kind of culture are the Yankees cultivating that their young talent isn't being forward about potential ailments? Could it be the same pressure that led to Rizzo claiming he was fine when he obviously wasn't? That led Severino to keep getting hurt mid-recovery? That's causing Yordan to consistently yo-yo between the IL and the field? One truly has to wonder at this point. All in all, the Yankees have suffered a truly incredible amount of injuries over the recent decade or so. To be fair, some have been of the freak variety, as in the moment there's nothing to be done about players running into walls or getting hit by pitches or the like, but too often guys like Stanton, Yordan, and Ellsbury have issues that are either preventable or treatable with a more conservative recovery plan. Too often, these guys seem to be playing through injury, instead of just playing hurt. Following the 2019 season, when a slew of key Yankees went down, the team fired its strength and conditioning coach and hired a fitness guru, Eric Cressey, to oversee training and strength and conditioning. They also hired a new pitching coach in an attempt to update and modernize their approach on the mound. They're obviously trying to change the culture, but has it worked? Honestly, it just doesn't seem so. Already, the Yankees are staring down big-time injury questions in 2024, starting with pitcher Garrett Cole, who will miss at least 2 months because of elbow inflammation. This apparently is just nerve irritation and edema, with no obvious sign of a torn UCL. Cole is opting to rest and do plyometric exercises until he's ready to throw again, but he most likely won't be back until May. The Yankees had rolled the dice in the middle of the 2014 season when Masahiro Tanaka had a partially torn UCL. He rested and rehabbed the elbow, and came back by the end of September, instead of missing over a year. This proved to be the rare time they seemed to make the right call in conjunction with Masahiro's camp. Will the same be true for Cole, who admittedly does seem to have a more mild injury, or will it blow up in their face, becoming another piece in a pile of growing evidence against their organizational injury philosophy? He might still need Tommy John surgery after all, meaning if he waits until May, he'll miss all of this season and half of next season at a minimum. The Rays went through this with Shane Baz, who tried to rehab his elbow for months, and then got the surgery anyway, causing him to miss basically 2 full seasons instead of 1. I'm just hoping something changes in 2024, that they start putting more of an emphasis on injury prevention than just playing through it. Because as much as many fans hate the Yankees, no one wants to see them lose due to something as grisly as on-field injuries, or the mishandling of them. On top of that, Aaron Judge's clock is ticking, and I personally would love to see him reach Hall of Fame status, something that might be in jeopardy if his current trajectory of ailments continues. But, for now, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Now, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, consider liking and subscribing and clicking on this playlist for more essay content just like this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.